Apparently that's the sound that I make whenever I start talking. I do a...
Nobody would ever make fun of
You
that.
can go back and check the records. Apparently that's true. There's again. Mr. Penka's here.
Mr. Knorr.
They're both here.
We're here.
And we're here to talk to you about a very serious subject, and we'll try and do so very seriously.
Yes, sir.
We're going to give you 2 lessons for the price of 1 today.
Lesson 3
on Plessy v. Ferguson.
Lesson 4
Jim Crow. Ferguson. It's one of those words that the more you say it, Ferguson, the weirder it sounds. Ferguson. Anyway. I did it again. Why am I doing that? Our story here picks up 1892, and I would like you to highlight some things on this page because I know it's already there for you out of the kindness of our hearts, but I'd like you to do some highlighting. Plessy versus Ferguson is a Supreme Court case brought to you by Homer Plessy. Now, there are 2 pictures of Homer here. One of them is a photograph, and one of them is a drawing. Can you guess which one looks most like him?
I think the drawing one's the photograph.
Yeah, the drawing is the photograph. No, wait. No. And you may be able to discern a difference between... You may notice that on this page, the gentleman Homer Plessy is here and here. That's him and that's him. So can you spot any differences between this picture and this picture, boys and girls?
The hat.
That's right. There's a hat here. There's no hat there. Is that it? That's pretty much it, right? Apart from that, it is an exact replica of Homer Plessy. Oh, the bow tie, right. Bow tie here and a stylish ascot right there. So apart from that, that's pretty much it. Apart from that, exact depiction of the man as he was. Hat, beard, and the tie.
Oh, yeah, beard.
Also, small thing there, skin color, completely different. So some would say that this one over here is more like the man as he actually was. Some might say that. At the time, though, he was, to people in the South, this is who he is. That's because we're dealing with what the heck does race mean?
And they wouldn't have known what he looked like other than what the newspaper showed.
That's right. He wouldn't have been interviewed on the local news because they haven't yet got around to inventing that stuff yet. So, Homer Plessy, what is he? Is he a white man? Is he a black man? Now, he's got... Well, let's go ahead and read this. Now, I did it again. Sorry. Very self-conscious of that now. I'd like you to read this this little thing on Homer Plessy's story, and then so pause it right now, and then we'll rejoin you, and we'll tell you what things we want you to take from this. So pause it now, and now you've unpaused it. Welcome back.
Well, they may have paused it the first.
You know what?
time
Maybe
and
you
then
didn't pause
paused
it. I have
again.
no way of knowing. I have no way of knowing what you did.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
It's
Maybe
just
you
really
never paused it.
Okay.
Some key things to take from this. Plessy was only 1/8 black, but under Louisiana law, he was considered black. Now, do the math on that. Only 1/8 black and 7/8 white. Now, you came from 2 people. Those 2 people came from 2 people. So that means that 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents. Am I right on that math there?
I think so.
Okay. That means if one of those great-grandparents was an African-American and the other 7 great-grandparents were white from the region in Europe called White, the White region with the White Mountains. So that's what he is. So he is therefore, by logic,
We got to guess pretty much that it was a owner of a slave that caused some of this to happen.
That's right. If you're going back to, if you're in 1892 and you go back to great-grandparents' time, that means that his descendants, going back to great
He
grandparents,
shouldn't have been doing.
there was a slave probably involved, and therefore he is black. Now, looking at Homer there, he didn't think he was. So he sat on a part of a train car that he shouldn't have, and he argued that the Separate Car Act violated the 13th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. That he has the right to equal protection under the law. And that, actually I'm not sure how he would have sued under the 13th Amendment there.
I don't.
Anyway, so the Separate Car Act that said that he had to be in a colored car, that violates the 13th and 14th Amendments. And Ferguson had previously declared it was unconstitutional on trains. In Plessy's case, however, he decided the state could regulate railroad companies that operate only within Louisiana.
So his first decision was that trains that traveled from state to state couldn't do this. But
And
then
this
his
is-
second decision is that if it was inside a state, they were allowed to keep them separate.
This is a big debate in American history throughout, even up to today, is can the federal government interfere in matters of the state? So, in this case, he's the judge at the state level is declaring that it's okay to do this within Louisiana. So this separation, separate but equal, it's okay. He found Plessy guilty of refusing to leave the white car. So Plessy was guilty of refusing to leave the white car. And he appealed to the Supreme Court of Louisiana, which upheld Ferguson's decision. I'm sorry, so Ferguson would have been a local court. And, all right. So later on, he appeals it up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court found him guilty once again. The Plessy decision set the precedent that separate facilities for blacks and whites were constitutional as long as they were equal. And I'm going to actually... as long as they were equal.
Which we know that they would not then be.
Constitutional as long as they were equal. So the whole idea of that is that somehow you can be equal and separate. But you would know, then I knew this when I was in when I was a kid, if there were different groups the teacher separated us into, you kind of know
You're not equal.
which one is the one that she likes and which one is not the one that she likes. So if you're in the Bluebirds reading group or the Blackbirds reading
I was
group,
always in the red-haired reading group.
you were in the Red Heron?
Red hair,
Red-haired.
yeah. So
Okay.
I was a redhead.
The Ginger reading group.
Yes.
Okay.
It was really...
And we all know, I don't know what that
yeah,
means.
forget it.
So, supposedly you could be equal. You're both riding on a train. You're both going somewhere. But the whole reason, and everyone knows this, it's kind of the elephant in the room. The whole reason you're being separated is because the white people don't think you're equal. They don't think you're the same. So why are they trying to separate you? Like, try explaining that to a kid. Like, why am I separated here? Oh, because we're both equal. A kid won't be able to make sense of that.
Yeah, why can't I, down below, why can't I go into this restaurant? Well, because you're equal to us.
Right.
And we would rather have you eat in your equal restaurant than in our equal restaurant or theater.
Go to someone's house as a dinner guest and have them say, I consider you my equal. Now, go eat in the garage.
And even in Virginia, what's the theater? The Tally Ho was segregated. Blacks were up in the balcony and the whites were down below. And you would think that was the better place. But back then, when there weren't movies, especially, and you had shows, you wanted to get as close as you could. Balcony was not a good
And
spot.
people found ways of making sense of that, like saying, "Oh, it's for the safety of the African Americans.
Right.
They're much better off over there," or they actually like that, or
Right. And if they're equal, why should they have to be safe?
yeah.
And-
But again, it's when you
We
go to
don't
the
know.
beginning of this. The beginning of this goes back to those black codes, the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment says that they're free, that they're equal. The 14th Amendment says they are citizens. And people in the South just did not believe that. They could not handle them being equal citizens, and so the black codes were created to return them to slavery. The 14th Amendment took care of the black codes, but this is an attempt to even go back to pre-13th Amendment to
So
say...
now the Supreme Court says that you can separate whites and blacks as long as it isn't equal separation, as long as they get equal things. But it eventually falls to the local authorities to decide whether or not it's equal or not. And in the South, they decided, and that's what we had.
And eventually, they in the Brown versus Board of Education, they're using the new science of psychology, and it's as simple as taking a little African American girl and asking her, do you think that the white doll or the black doll is the smart doll? And this little girl, she's learned all her life that the white doll is the smart doll, and they asked her, which doll do you think is the pretty doll? And she learned the white doll must be prettier, and which doll would you like to be someday? And the white doll. And it's because she grows up in a system where she knows that she's not considered equal, and they wouldn't be putting her in an inferior school if she was equal. So, there we go.
So what do we write down there?
Could you please write?
Man, I write well.
Yeah, look at that. So please write down separate, white, colored, but supposedly equal. And if you wanted to, if you could handle it, you could put the equal in quotes there, because these are clearly not considered equal situations. Okay, so now we're going to move on to Chapter 3, Lesson
4.
Plessy versus Ferguson makes the Jim Crow laws legal. The Jim Crow laws had already begun just right after the Reconstruction was over, and with the Compromise of 77, which was a result of the election of 76. The Compromise of 77 ends Reconstruction, and now it's pretty much the South can do whatever it wants to, and it creates the Jim Crow laws, which are designed to say we can't restore you to slavery, but we can communicate that you are inferior to us. All right, Jim Crow are laws designed to separate African Americans, and we're going to distinguish here racial segregation and then the Jim Crow laws. So racial segregation separates people based on race. Segregation is separation. Doing it by race is racial segregation. It's directed primarily against African Americans, but other groups were also kept segregated.
Like the Chinese and
Chinese,
Irish and Japanese eventually, and blah, 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 blah. All through history, yep. That's it. And the American Indians.
American Indians were kept on reservations, and if you asked me to explain why reservations are not segregation, I wouldn't do that, because they are segregation. But the term reservations is something you have to know for American Indians. But they were not declared citizens until 1924. Is there a good way of remembering that?
Yeah, there's a 19 and a 24, and you put them together.
Yeah. So if you take the 1, the 9, the 2, and the 4, and you put them in that order, it will help you to remember that 1924 was the year they were considered citizens. It's a fun little brain trick.
Yeah.
And Jim Crow laws are not people want you to be someplace separate. It's the law enforces it.
It's not a suggestion.
Yeah. So maybe the immigrants coming from someplace else may find that they are strongly encouraged to live with others of their kind away from the nice neighborhoods in ghettos and tenements. But in this case, the law is saying that African Americans have to be separated, and the law enforces discrimination. So discrimination practices were illegal in many communities and states from 1876 all the way up till 1965.
And beyond. In some ways, but not legally.
And were characterized by unequal opportunities in housing, education, work, and government. So to help you with that, housing, education, work, government.
Rome. Oh.
Which spells Hoog.
Yep.
H-E-W-G. Hoog. Hoog. Hug.
Yeah. Well,
huge.
Depends on how you pronounce it. Yeah.
So discrimination. Thank you very much.
Adios.